And today I'm very excited to welcome our guest speaker, Ericka Scott, who is here from the San Francisco African American Arts and Culture District to help us learn a little bit more about the neighborhood of Bayview, which we are featuring as our community for heritage in the neighborhoods for this year. So welcome, Ericka. How are you doing?
I'm great. How are you? Thank you for having me.
Oh, sure. I need to remember the questions I was going to ask you because I sent those to you earlier. But why don't you tell us just a little bit about the African American Arts and Culture District where you're at?
Okay, so the mayor established the San Francisco Cultural Districts program, and the goal was one of the solutions to gentrification. There are tons of neighborhoods in our city where they just don't look and feel like they used to. And a lot of it has to do with people moving into the communities, predominantly Black and Brown communities where the property values are lower, rent is lower, both commercial and personal. And so people moving into community want lower costs for their living and business expenses. So with that comes an influx of new people, and just the nature of gentrification, they're able to rebuild, and the community just looks and feel a lot different. And a lot of the social disparities that impacted the community when they were predominantly Black and Brown are suddenly being addressed. And so when that happens, now property values increase. And so the natives of each community sometimes can no longer afford to be there. So then there's a huge outmigration of Black and Brown people in certain communities. And so the Cultural Districts program was established so that the legacy, the heritage, the feel of what used to be really, really obvious cultural communities in San Francisco, that we didn't lose all of that with gentrification. And we talked before, and some of the situations present themselves a little late in the game. Because you can go to certain communities and you just don't get the cultural feel that you once had. So we're trying to preserve that with each cultural district. And we are the African American Arts and Cultural District, and our entire district is 94124. Most cultural districts are about 6 blocks. Ours is the entire 94124 because it just represents the cultural heritage of a particular community. And at one point, the Bayview Hunters Point was about 80% populated by African American families. That has dwindled tremendously, but still the legacy and the innovation and everything that was contributed by African Americans still make that great soil for Black people. And so we represent the African American Arts and Cultural District.
So do you do events and things like that? What is are you at your studio right now?
I'm at Honey Art Studio. I actually grew up in the Fillmore, and the same feel is, it's even more obvious in the Fillmore. What used to be a really, really robust African American populated community. We just had a group of students come and visit my art gallery here. And we have an exhibit right now of photos of Fillmore 1940s and 50s, when it was heavily populated by Black-owned businesses, restaurants. You would go and your doctor would be on the corridor, your dentist, and it was just a really positive image of Black people in the Fillmore. And so right now I have 62 images of what Fillmore used to look like. And so that's what's here, what you see in my background. But even though that was the case, that was like 40s and 50s, I wasn't here yet. So I did always hear about it. But in the 80s and 90s, when I grew up, you can tell there was a huge shift. It was just a lot of struggle. There were a lot more Black people on the streets and just walking and that you can interact with than they are now, but nothing like it was in the 40s and 50s. But I knew when I went to the Bayview was when I was gonna see people who look like me. And now that's dwindling. So with that being said, my heart is in both places. I love San Francisco, the city itself. But as a cultural district, our goal is to, again, preserve our history, preserve our culture. And so we do that in many ways. Our district was actually established right in the midst of the pandemic. So we started operating in emergency mode. And so we used most of our funds at that time to support the business owners and the artists who were, we all know, suffered greatly during the pandemic. So we offered many grants and we hosted opportunities for community murals. So we have several murals now along the 3rd Street corridor in collaboration with artists from our community. And we partner with the nonprofits in the community to provide support and build awareness and advocacy. We operate more as an umbrella for the businesses, the organizations, the churches, just as a tool to bring everybody together so that they have some support. We're like a liaison between the city and all of the boots on the ground organizations who actually work directly with the people.
Right. Community organizing is so important to get that you're doing. It's so important so that people understand what might be out there. Like you're saying, with especially legacy businesses. You and I had a discussion about legacy businesses in the Bayview. Yeah. And why don't you tell me a little bit about that? There aren't that many, isn't that correct?
So again, like I said, Black people, you knew you would see them when you got to Bayview. And when I say see, I mean as business owners, as the teachers in the schools, their just presence was there. And now it's, again, like I said, it's just not the same. And so with the Cultural Districts program and SF Heritage and organizations like that, trying to preserve what was once something that we had as Black and Brown and minority businesses and institutions in our community is just not as prevalent. And so the goal is there's a program right now, I believe it's through the San Francisco business department, and they recognize legacy businesses. Mm-hmm. And with that is a brick and mortar. And unfortunately, a lot of our businesses have not survived. The heavy population in the Bayview was at its peak in the 40s through the 70s, and then started dwindling down in the 80s once the shipyard closed. And with that, the housing and businesses and everything started to dwindle. And so businesses who had thrived for a very long time at that point started to lose traction. And so now that we want to honor these legacy businesses due to just economic factors that affect anybody and everybody, unfortunately, it always impacts our Black and Brown communities even harder. And so, again, with the loss of jobs and just unfortunate city politics and racist systems, we just don't have the legacy businesses anymore that could actually be honored in these ways that the city is providing.
I just read something, Ericka, about, when we try to open up different, to, women, African-American, Hispanic, American Indian, when we try to open things up, we're still welcoming people back into the same system. So it's more about changing some of the systems. And how do you see contributing to that? So maybe intangible heritage,
Yeah.
And I think you lost your light there, Ericka, because I can't see your face as much. But yeah, so
Let me
I would
see if
think,
I can get a better angle.
oh, that's better. There you go.
Yeah,
So
okay.
intangible heritage, I think, is so important when we're talking about communities such as Bayview or even Fillmore, where maybe there's still the brick and mortar there in the Fillmore, but the whole history of jazz was very important for the African-American community in Fillmore. Isn't that correct?
That's absolutely correct. And I think what we are trying to establish here with the cultural district and many of our partners is developing ecosystems that support the business all the way through. Because you're right, opening a business is not what it used to be. My mom operated her own business for 25 years. I just have entrepreneurship in my blood, and I've actually taught entrepreneurship development for a number of years. And it's great to have the aspiration and it's great to have the information, but actually understanding the systems and the resources, and now everything is tech. You have to be connected and you have to have that consistent, like a whole system that supports your business. The times for just a mom and pop shop, just opening up, running your own business is probably not likely to survive. There has to be a stronger connection. What we've noticed even through some of the city programs is the city literally coming in and supporting a business owner, helping with the actual infrastructures and helping with the build out and helping to purchase inventory, and then connecting to technology systems. And I mean, and that's the kind of support honestly each business owner needs in order to really, really effectively run an operation. And so we're in constant conversation and constant building partnerships and systems with the city to make sure that these business owners are equipped theoretically, but then also when it comes to practicality of running and operating a business.
Right. I mean, you need access to a huge amount of capital now, but then if you're working through something that's been systemic for generations, you don't maybe have access to the funding that you would need to start the business that you would have been able to do that before. So what do you see as some opportunities though? So you're working there, and then you and I will be working closely together this year on highlighting not only what you're talking about, but also the historic structures, which after, I know you have to go about 12:30, Ericka. So after you, we are featuring photographs by Dale Cruse, and we're going to be sort of going on like a little digital walking tour of the neighborhood, highlighting historic structures. But so what other opportunities do you see for you and Heritage and the groups that are involved down there for celebrating, you know, really celebrating the history of Bayview, Fillmore, Hunters Point? And but we need to acknowledge, of course, that African-American history is not just restricted to those areas or to just 1 month of the year. This is something that we need to think about all year and in all of the neighborhoods of the city. But why don't you just tell me some of the opportunities that you see?
And first I want to just address that, because being in San Francisco, you can, you know, identify with a particular area, but I actually lived in Chinatown for 3 years, and we partner with the Chinese American Center on one of our murals, which is right on 3rd and Quezada, a wonderful mural that we partner together to bridge the gap between the cultures and to say that, yes, there's a lot of negativity going on, but there's a long history with African Americans and our Chinese brothers and sisters. So, and then just because of the school system, you know, I went to school in the Avenues, I went to school down in the Marina, you know, so you're right. Our presence, just all people in San Francisco, we usually just really connect with each other, you know, all the time. I always visit the Mission, and, you know, so I'm glad you acknowledged that. But some of the good things and some of the opportunities, I will say, it's unfortunate, but it's usually the way that things really get recognized is when someone, unfortunately, they lose their life. And that was the case with Floyd, sorry. it brought a voice to how I know I felt, and many people that I know felt forever. We were raised, my aunt was actually the executive administrator for the San Francisco Redevelopment Agency for a very long time. And she raised us, and she would tell us we have to work twice as hard as other people from other nationalities. And I took that to heart, and I was like, that's not fair. Like, why? And we hearing this at like 9 and 10 years old. Like, this is what we were taught. And so you just have this burden as a 9-year-old, that you have to do so much more and you have to work so much harder, and you still won't be considered equal. So these are realities of what we carry as a community, as people. And the reason I brought up George Floyd is because it made it okay to say this, because if you even mentioned it, it was like, there's no racism in San Francisco. There's no racism. Get over it. And, Black people are just poor and Black people are lazy. And, you hear all these stereotypes and you're like, no, like, that's not it, but again, because that's what's perpetuated and that's what you see more than anything else, so many other people really believe that. So when you say something different, it's like, you're the mad Black woman, So again, it's refreshing to just be able to say, so, okay, you guys, you see, this is how we've had to live for, decades and, centuries. So with that being said, America has stood up, and I'm getting emails like constantly from corporations saying that they're now incorporating programs specific for women or specific for women of color or specific for Black and brown people. So we are trying to make good on those promises. Now we know some of them were just promises, but as a district and as a people, we are really having these conversations with the corporations to say, hey, you guys have benefited so much from the African-American dollar, so much from the African-American communities. We're going to honor what you presented to us. And so especially our goal is to build our 3rd Street corridor. And we are literally connected on the same line with the Warrior Stadium, with Chase Center, with the Giant Stadium. And right next door is Dog Patch. And I remember Dog Patch when it was just simply empty industrial buildings. And now it's one of the most thriving communities in San Francisco. So we are now looking into see how do these systems run? How do they work? And we are asking, again, like you said, for capital support, but also just technology and education and information on how do you really maintain and run and have a thriving business corridor. So that's one of our goals, is to really tap into the additional resources that are now being made open because so many doors were closed for us for so long.
Right. And then Ericka, you know how history rolls right back around. And so I would think that one of the issues that you and I would be working on would be also protecting what you do have. So as soon as, I drove through Dog Patch the other day too, and I was like, wow, this is really happening over here.
Right.
It's usually bad news though, for the neighborhoods around it that are, because it's the properties then are seen as undervalued, perhaps by other people who do have the capital in hand. And so I think that making sure, for sure, when you and I are working together with Heritage in the neighborhood is something I want to work with you and your community, is to really define what it is that makes that community, which we have done. And I'll talk about the African-American historic context towards the end of the program, but using, that kind of resource, your work and your resources, and really identifying the character of the neighborhood so that is not lost, whether it's tangible through the buildings or intangible through the art and the murals and just the foodways, the dance, the music, all of the things. There's been a lot of information lately about how neighborhoods change sometimes even slowly, and then before you know it, it's disappeared. Right. And what we want to do is avoid that, and make sure that we have a lot of these things captured for sure. Why
Yeah.
don't you tell us about some of your programs? So I know you're having a big event this Saturday, which is going to be
Yes.
supporting your organization.
Yes, so we are hosting a closeout for, we are hosting our gala, our first gala for the Cultural District, which is at the Ruth Memorial Bayview Opera House. And again, this is the first time we've able to come together in person as an organization in this kind of manner, but it's our first gala. And we still have tickets available.
Oh, wonderful. And I think Nando is ready.
Yes.
Our one of our co-producers here, Nando is ready to post that link in the chat, which I failed to
Awesome.
tell people. If you
Yes.
want to communicate with each other, you can go ahead and chat. Put
Oh
in the
yeah,
chat in the
okay, I'll send
comment.
that over.
I think Nando will find it if he's still back there in the production zone. The
Oh,
other
awesome.
thing, Ericka, is that you and I will be together
Yes,
tomorrow,
tomorrow.
February 23rd. We are going to have the opening of Honey Art Studio at Gallery 1506. That's at 1506 Haight Street in the storefronts of the historic Doolin Larson building. And so tell us a little bit about what kind of art you're going to highlight during your gallery time.
Okay, so this is special for me because I get to combine, like I said, both communities. So we have artwork from our renowned artist, Malik Seneferu, who is a well-known artist. Actually, he's presented his work in multiple countries. He's born and raised in Bayview. His heart and soul is Bayview. He has a studio at the Shipyard in Bayview. But he also has done a lot of work over in the Fillmore. He was one of the resident artists at the African American Art and Cultural Complex, which is on Fulton Street in the Fillmore. And so you will get to see some of his work. We also have Yolanda Banks, who is an artist and an advocate for Black people's rights, and her work represents social justice, and it's really incredible. We also have some, some social justice fashion designers. And actually, they just dropped off some of their clothes here at the studio that I'm going to bring over to the gallery, and we're going to set up their little exhibit. And we also have a music presentation. So it's gonna be filled with just lots of culture, excitement, and fun, and then just the reality of who we are as Black people. And so yeah, just really looking forward to seeing you all there. And please bring someone with you, and you'll get to meet some of these fantastic artists as well.
Yeah, there'll be a DJ, you said.
Oh, and it's gonna be DJ. We're gonna have fun.
We're going to have DJ. And if anyone's joining us on Facebook, I didn't post the address in the Facebook chat. Have too many windows open, but you can join us from 4 to 6 p.m. That's tomorrow, February 23rd. And we will be at Gallery 1506 celebrating Black History Month, Honey Art Studio, and also just enjoying music and being together at Haight Ashbury. So Ericka, I know you do have to run to another meeting because it's very busy time for you preparing for your gala. But I want to thank you sincerely for your time and your expertise today, because I just think it's so important to get this message out to the community.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow.
Okay. All right. Thanks so much, Ericka.
Bye-bye.
Bye. All right, everybody. So we have something special coming up next for you, which is let me just get my windows put together here. We're going to have, I'd like to welcome Dale Cruse. Go ahead and turn on your camera. Hey, Dale, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Thanks. This is a lot of fun. So it's my pleasure to introduce Dale Cruse. He's a photographer who lives in Bayview. And Dale has very generously offered to share some of his photos, and also very generously has agreed to sort of let me insert some of my historical information, which is what I like doing. And so I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to just go through a couple of like a walking tour. Wouldn't you say, Dale? Like, you see my screen there?
Yes.
We're just going to go on a little walking tour with Chris and Dale, capturing the Bayview area. So And if you do have any questions, you can either use the Q&A box or you can go ahead and post a comment in the chat. And if you're on Facebook, you could just post something in that window and I could answer you afterward. First of all, I just wanted to get us all situated because when I first moved to San Francisco a while ago now, but I couldn't figure out where all these neighborhoods were. So I wanted to put up this map and you can see that Bayview's Hunters Point is in the south area of the city. And I provided these maps from the historic context statement. On the right, you can see where it says the shoreline, Northern Gateway, Town Center, et cetera. So we're down in the southern part of the city. And Dale, why don't you explain to us a little bit about your method and what you see when you're walking around the neighborhood?
Sure. First, I should thank you for having me. It's an honor to be able to share these kinds of images. My background kind of starts with historic preservation in terms of architecture and photography. So meaning 1995, 1996, I was in the US Army. I was a photojournalist. And at that time I was deployed to Bosnia and Croatia. And I found myself taking a lot of photos of buildings and the built environment, things that were just bombed out from the long civil war that was held there. And there was something in me that felt it was important to capture these images for posterity, capture these images as, you know, at that time it was too late in some respects. Some of the buildings were and their contents were already lost. And so I said, I want to be able to capture these things because I feel they're important. So one of the most iconic things in our neighborhood is our opera house. Local lore says that we've never actually staged an opera at our opera house. Not sure exactly if that's entirely true, but it makes for a great little story. And one of the things that I think people will notice here is while this is referred to as the Bayview Opera House, or as Ericka referred to it, the Ruth Williams Memorial Bayview Opera House, you'll notice here it doesn't actually say Bayview Opera House on it. It says South San Francisco Opera House. And at one point, when this was built in 1888, this area of the city was still referred to as South San Francisco or Southern San Francisco. Now, we know today that South San Francisco is a separate city in a separate county, but back at this time, this area was what was referred to as South San Francisco. I am particularly drawn to this Italianate style of architecture, and you'll see that in a few of the photos here. And I'm a big fan of, there's this guy in the city who's referred to as Dr. Color, Bob Buckner, and he's the one who led the repainting of this, and I just love shooting so much of his stuff. So you'll find a lot of this, single point of view, centered kind of thing, and kind of flat imagery,
So you just walk around and take photos.
Well, this thing is on the National Register of Historic Places. I think it's on the National Register. It's certainly on the city registry, and it's right near my house. It's right near where I am at the moment. So it's exciting for me to be able to go capture images like this and share them.
Well, and this building just underwent a 3-year, $5 million makeover. It was by the San Francisco architectural firm of TEF, and artist and architect Walter Hood were involved with this. And I do believe it won a California Preservation Foundation Award for Historic Preservation. And then I will show you some. So Dale's going to show, I'll show a photo from Dale, and then I'll contribute with some history. So I found this timeline for the building. which helps us understand some of the context. So built in 1888. It's actually built with the Masonic Lodge right next door, which we'll see in a second. It was a cultural center for Butchertown because that's what the neighborhood was known as. Like you were saying, it was not known as Bayview at that point. The architect here is Henry Galfus. And then you can see through time, it was a vaudeville and theater, and it turned into a cinema also at one point. It says that the National Register of Historic Places nomination was 2011, but it was named a San Francisco landmark in 1968, which I think is fairly significant for a number of reasons. This was also during, as you know, late 60s, the civil rights era. And then you can see it was purchased by San Francisco Arts, I'm sure, to save it. And the reopening of the building was just in 2016. So I found a couple of great little historic photos of the structure I wanted to share with everybody. This was no doubt when it was getting repainted at some point. This was 1976. The city had this ranking on it. And I think it's interesting because they say unique visual feature of interest only got a 2, which is obviously not the right ranking for this building. Here's a historic photograph that I found from on opensfhistory.org, where they are calling it the Bayview Center. So you can see how the building is going through these different periods. This is 1940s, and that's the Masonic Lodge next to it. All of this wood frame architecture is very fragile, as you know. When I was talking about some buildings in San Francisco the other day, a lot of them had burned down. I'm not sure what happened to Masonic Lodge, but it is not there anymore. You can see in this drawing. And then here, just to show you, I thought this was very interesting. Sanborn maps are a great resource. And thanks for posting that link, Ericka, to your gala registration. I appreciate it. It's in the chat if anyone's interested in attending. So here I have, this is the Sanborn map, and it's interesting because the Sanborn map for the Opera House says no heat available at the center, and also the police station was right next door, looks like at the bottom of the Masonic. So just some interesting little tidbits. All right.
And before you move, actually, before you move on,
okay,
you'll notice in the upper right of the map, South San Francisco Brewery.
Right.
Yeah, and also Railroad Avenue is cutting through the center of this image, and that was the early name for what is now 3rd Street. And the
that's great.
Yeah, the 3rd Street corridor that Ericka mentioned before.
You can see all kinds of the different companies that were here. I see John Stumpf Storage, it looks like, and then up at the brewery, it says One Man Sleeps. Something, I can't read it. I'll have to do a little more research. But I think the brewery is that that's not this building, is it? Is this a different one?
It is not.
Okay,
no, that's a different.
So Dale, why don't you explain to us? So Dale's photo is on the right that he took of the plaque. Why don't you explain a little bit about this building?
Albion Brewery, you might see in the plaque there, it says established 1870. So that actually predates the Opera House. My understanding of this building is that a natural spring runs underneath it, super clean water, and they were able to use this to brew beer. The brewery itself, long gone. However, the building itself, is very much still there. It's privately owned, and my understanding is that there's a picture, and my understanding is that it can be rented for private events.
It looks great. I want to definitely see this. So if you try to look this up on Google Street View, though, you can't see it at all. So I just got this from the noehill.com, and I want to thank all of these websites for providing me with some research information. So here's a picture that Dale, you did. Explain what we're seeing here.
I believe this is 3rd and Kirkwood, side of a liquor store here, and I love this mural because it really tells a story. They're placing a very, a Black infant in the center of this neighborhood, and I think through this representation of the sun and birds. They're really showing how, you know, this child is from this neighborhood, will grow up, is capable of doing remarkable things. And I just love the representation here. You'll see a heron represented there. One of the parks here in the neighborhood is Heron's Head Park. So I'm sure that's where that comes from. And this is an example of a mural where there's lots of murals throughout San Francisco, obviously. But the ones in the Bayview have a little different flavor. And I'm drawn to what makes a location unique. And so several of these murals that you will see from me are things that you would see only in this neighborhood. You wouldn't see that type of mural in let's say, the Mission or elsewhere. And yeah, and here's a great shot of the
this is building. The building before. I mean, I think that you do see that. And I think that's why with San Francisco Heritage, we do focus, even though a mural is tangible, I do think of it as somewhat intangible heritage because it's very fragile and can be lost very easily. And I do think that is where community can take a building that was constructed in a different period, such as the Victorian structures, and they are personalized using these murals. So this is the picture of the building without the mural that represents, it seems like, a rebirth of the community. Here's where that building would be again on the historic map, which I find so interesting. By now they're calling, it still says Railroad Avenue in parentheses, but now it's called 3rd Avenue. So we'll keep running. 3rd Street, yeah. So now we'll keep running through these. So this is the old Clam House, which apparently was out of business for a while. It's just been reopened. So tell us a little bit about the Clam House, Dale, what you see when you're there.
The old Clam House has the designation of being the oldest restaurant in San Francisco in its original location. There's one or two others in the city that are older, but have moved around. This place it's been here since its inception, and it did close for a while during the pandemic. But you're right, it's back open. The food's as good as ever, and it's a great place to stop by.
And such classic neon. So I do notice when I travel around San Francisco, there's a lot of these martini glasses on neon signs, and I'm wondering if they were a lot of them maybe come from the same neon company. I'll have to do some more research on that. But they have a classic neon, which is also a fragile resource that you don't see much of. This is Bayview Rise, which is a grain elevator. It has art created by Laura Haddad and Tom Drugan. Where is this at in terms of the neighborhoods? You have to walk out onto a bridge or?
This is clearly visible when you enter the neighborhood from the north. So earlier you mentioned Dogpatch. If you were traveling south through Dogpatch into the Bayview, one of the first things that greets you is Bayview Rise. And until recently, there was some illumination with it so that at night, it actually kind of looked like the balloons were rising up that elevator. So it was a really cool visual. I think this is an interesting example of, I think the mural kind of saved the building. This is a grain elevator, as you mentioned, that's no longer in use. And I'm pretty certain it would have been torn down by now if it wasn't for this interesting bit of art. So while, as you and I were talking before this meeting, sometimes street art can take away from a building, there's also instances where sometimes it could actually save it.
I agree. I thought that was so fun when you mentioned that to me. I was like, oh, sometimes this the graffiti everywhere really is can ruin the structure. This, of course, is not graffiti; it's actual art commissioned for the structure. But I do agree that it can highlight perhaps a building that wouldn't be appreciated otherwise. And what is that ship? Just curious. Do we have any idea what's going on there? Is that?
I'm not entirely certain, and I don't want to speak out of turn, so I don't
Me
know
neither.
exactly.
I just know it looks big old ship. Okay, we'll keep going. This is the Joseph Lee Recreation Center with a mural by Dewey Crumpler called The Fire Next Time. And we were talking that The Fire Next Time is a 1963 book and essay by James Baldwin. And Dale, you said James Baldwin actually visited the neighborhood.
He sure
point.
did.
Mhm.
I believe, I want to say somewhere between 1963, 1967, I believe it was. And he famously visited the neighborhood. And in fact, there's a short film about it. I believe it's If I Had a Hammer, something along those lines. I can double check that. Anyway,
That's interesting.
So this is named for from the book, The Fire Next Time. And most of this mural wraps around this building. So this is really just one facing of it. And
Right. This is Dale's photo. And then this is a photo of another part of it that I saw on the internet. And then Dewey Crumpler also, if you follow some of our other activities, Dewey Crumpler also wrote the reaction, or he was artist behind the reaction mural, what's called the reaction mural at George Washington High School. So we have just some really interesting, I would just say that there's just some really interesting power in art this way that's really, it's capturing, I believe this is 1977, capturing the period of the civil rights, but then what happened afterward as well. As we know, those of us who lived through the 70s, it was still quite difficult for people to find their rights even after things were legalized through the Civil Rights Act.
And I should mention that building is right next to the Opera House.
Oh, is it? Oh, wow. How interesting. Well, I can't wait to get down there and do some more walking around. That's for sure. All right. So we have Providence Baptist Church here. This church, I don't know if I found the architect, but this is Dale's photo, which I really like this, the way that you capture the energy of this structure and the way that it feels very modernist to me. And I'm a real modernist.
and that's part of the reason that I grabbed this. I really love the juxtaposition of the building against the negative space. So it really kind of juts out, and I thought that was a lot of fun and a great opportunity to grab a very angular shot to document this place.
Here's a historic photograph of it. Let's see, I do not know the architect. This is from the city website, which I will also show you how I get some of this information so that you can research your own properties for everybody who's tuning in. So here it says formed in 1943. It was the brainchild of Reverend Freeman Banks and J.S. Pugh. The church includes several organizations, and it's one of several Black churches that coordinated the one-day boycott of schools in 1978, which makes me think of that 1977 mural we were just looking at. So let me continue. This is the Bayview Baptist Church that you captured. And you had some ideas also, Dale. We were just talking about how important the churches are to the community, like real centerpieces.
Sure. I think, centerpieces of almost any neighborhood are going to be places of worship. And I think these are two good examples where you got two Baptist churches in the same neighborhood, and neither of these buildings are big, grand cathedrals or anything. They're almost common, everyday buildings that are used for houses of worship. And I think that's something that you see quite a bit in this neighborhood, is churches and houses of worship that are everyday buildings. And what really is exciting, what happens is what's on the inside, and inside being the worship services.
Exactly. And I do a lot of research, and I've noticed that the National Register of Historic Places, one of the issues when you're looking at African American or Hispanic or American Indian places is that the vernacular is what you call like the common. We would say it's vernacular, so it doesn't have a grand cathedral presence, but it's very important to the community. It doesn't take away from that identity for the community. One of the issues then is, as an architectural historian, that we have to describe the building according to standards that were set up a long time ago, like in the 60s, and have been adapted since. And so that is one of the things that really stands in the way of recognizing historic structures in sometimes communities like this, because you have to use your architectural historian words with them. Anyway, there's definitely a progress in that area, I am happy to say. And I heard that the National Register is also changing its, they have limitations on religious structures, which of course is a hindrance for cultural communities that find these buildings to be the most important in their neighborhoods. This is the Southeast Community Center that you photographed, and we're including just as something this appears to be a new building, right? So modern.
It's very new. It has been completed in the last just couple of months. We fortunately were able to get this new community center built, and it's now open for events. There's now a small restaurant available as well, great playground for kids, and so it's become a real destination.
I apologize, I don't know the architect, but I will find these things out for the next time. So this is the Feline Finesse Dance Company with a fun little mural that's celebrating women's hair, which is a very sensitive topic, especially in the African American community. And so you were saying that this yellow and blue was really compelling to you, right?
Well, part of that is, first of all, I love anything that's gold that looks gold.
Gold, right?
You probably noticed that on the Opera House website or Opera House photo, and also this particular combination of colors is very much the Golden State Warriors colors. So I think that works well with this dance company. And Afatasi, the artist, was the muralist here, really kind of capturing a lot of fun energy.
I love it. So cute. And this one is on the Louisiana Fish building by muralist Rafa One. And you had pointed out some of the words around here you found compelling.
But I should mention that I believe Rafa One was the same muralist who did the Malcolm X mural that we showed earlier.
I think it's coming up next.
Oh, I'm sorry. So to the right of this mural is there's something that says "Dream but don't sleep," and as soon as I read that, I had to capture this image. To me, that it speaks to, aim for something bigger, brighter, dream for a better day, but don't ignore opportunities. Don't just let the world pass you by. This photo is special to me because it kind of represents part of the reason I take these photos. This street art does not exist anymore. It's gone. And so I felt compelled to capture, this sort of thing. And I'm happy to be able to share it and kind of bring it to life again in memory.
Exactly what we were talking about. The murals are so fragile, and if the building goes and the building owners, there you go. So here's the Malcolm X one.
Yes,
you talked about this on Kirkwood Avenue by the same muralist. I can see some of the similar themes. Yeah.
This is another great example of something that you don't typically see in other neighborhoods. Lots of murals like in the Mission and elsewhere, but you're not going to really see a mural of Malcolm X elsewhere in the city. So I'm proud to capture images like that.
Well, he's obviously a real community leader in the sense of what we're talking about in the historical context of the Bayview as African-American community. So this is one of the last buildings we're going to talk about, which I get a big kick out of this one. So this is Dale's photo on the right, and I was so excited to see this because I just come across this building in doing the history of the Castro Theater, which seems like, why would that be, Chris? Somebody might not know. So I'll give you a little hint. This house was actually moved to the present location in 1913 from another location in Bayview. It's known as the Sylvester House. And of course, it's beautiful today, gorgeous. It's also, I do believe we have a San Francisco Heritage easement, conservation easement on the facade of this building. Built 1865, the builder was Stephen Piper. He was a prominent carpenter. There's a picture I found in the city records right there where it looks like maybe the building wasn't in quite as good a shape in those days. And Dale, you're interested in the garages. I saw that the garages were created from the old stables that were at the previous location of this house.
I know that the truck in this photo is distracting, but part of the reason I left it there is you can see that I'm pretty sure that doesn't even fit in that garage. So clearly, you know, whenever those garages were added, we were using smaller vehicles then. So I kind of left that there for scale to show that times of even with our vehicles, you know, obviously times change.
And what a beautiful building. I have another photo. So this is why I was interested in that building. As you know, San Francisco Heritage is heavily involved in saving the landmarks, the seats inside this landmark building so that the building can continue to show film. And the landmark amendment that included the interior elements was just approved by the Historic Preservation Commission. Of course, now it has to go through many other steps. But during my research, I discovered that there were at least, I believe it was 19 different companies provided the interior elements. This building was designed by Timothy Pfluger. The Fagioni Company Studios did the beautiful sgraffito murals, which is where you're painting on the plaster. They did the murals in the Castro Theater, and they worked with Timothy Pfluger on quite a number of other, and the Nasser brothers actually on a couple of other theaters in San Francisco. Well, where did the Fagioni Company Studios guys live? They lived right there at the Bayview. Here's Constantino, Silvio, and Augusto lived on Revere in this really great building, and the whole family lived there, including their wives and children. So it's just interesting that when we're looking at something in one part of San Francisco, it really links together critically with so many other parts of the story. And you can't, it's very holistic. You can't just take one piece and say that's important or maybe that. You really have to do this comprehensive view. And when I saw that these two buildings, that the Castro Theater is related to that, the Sylvester House in Bayview, I thought that was such a fun and interesting fact. All right, so this, and what's right next door? You were going to tell us about this building.
Yeah, right next door to Sylvester House is this, and I don't know much about the people who, or the person or people who live there, but I do know they have a very eccentric display of things in the yard there, and also notice we're back to the gold and bluish purple theme that we've seen several times. Clearly, some people have messed with some of the things in the yard, because in this photo, I can count at least 5 security cameras. And I noticed there's all sorts of fun details in here, including a little Humpty Dumpty there toward the top.
I just saw that, how cute, right by the stairs. And this is such a cute little Spanish colonial. It reminds me of the buildings that I grew up with in Glendale, California, right outside of Los Angeles. And I just love this building. I think, you know, the person obviously just adores their architecture here, and this has artistic freedom, which I really find interesting.
I noticed on the stairs, clearly there would have been lights in those little wells, and they're all broken out, which to me is not an accident. There's, for some reason, clearly, you know, the person got rid of those. So there's all sorts of little interesting decisions made here.
Great little house. And then we're just going to close out on the Hunters Point gantry crane, World War II. You had a little story behind this gantry crane.
So this is the crane that during World War II, ships, US Navy ships that are out in the Pacific, they would come back here. And that crane, among other things, was used to lift the gun turrets off of the boats and bring on new ones. Now, many of those boats that had seen action in the Pacific were exposed to nuclear radiation. And unfortunately, many of them brought that nuclear radiation with them when they came here to Hunters Point. And this whole area is now a Superfund site. There's ongoing legal cases with this, but frankly, it became an environmental disaster. And so that gantry crane has become kind of a visible symbol of the neighborhood, whether it be showing its boom period as well as its bust period. And it really, that thing alone kind of tells the story of the neighborhood over time.
Wow, so interesting. So Dale, I want to thank you for joining us today. I really appreciate your flexibility and playing along with me as we do this walking tour through the Bayview neighborhood. And I definitely want us to meet again. And we're going to be highlighting Dale's pictures actually through 2023 at least, because he has so many great photographs of Bayview. Anyway, so thanks for joining us, Dale.
Thank you.
All right, see you soon. Just to close out, I wanted to show everybody where I'm getting this information, because I think, something that is really great is you can find this information on your own properties. So I wanted to make sure everybody knows about the San Francisco Property Information Map. You can see the URL right at the top, sfplanninggis.org. You go there, you can type in the address of a house that you're looking for, and you can find so much information, including the old historic preservation designations, any kind of permits, and information about architects, including links to the old Sanborn maps, which is where you really learn more about the community. Also, just to note, the African American Historic Context Statement is in draft form and available for the public to read and understand and get more information on the African American and Black history of San Francisco. The URL again is at the bottom, you'll see. And this is produced by historians Tim Kelly, Christopher Plank, and Al Williams of the African American Historical and Cultural Society. And I'd really recommend that you take a look through this to see how Black and African American history occurred throughout the city in all kinds of neighborhoods and through all kinds of periods of the development of San Francisco. Inside that context statement, you can see that we cover all the way from the African descendants in Alta California, all the way up through Black outmigration and community responses up to 2018. It's a really incredible document, and it's available for you to look at. Right now, it's under the process of being finalized, which will take just a little more time. So the important thing about something like a historic context is it includes information such as this, which provides the thematic framework so that you could nominate, or somebody, an architectural historian could nominate an important structure using this thematic framework. So the African American historic context really enables other structures, other artworks, things that we want to save can then be put in the context. Then they can be presented in terms of landmark nominations. It's a very important work. All right, just to close out, thanks everyone for hanging in there. We are going to be celebrating, tomorrow, my show just disappeared. We're going to be celebrating tomorrow at the at Gallery 1506, that's at 1506 Haight Street, between 4 and 6 p.m. The public is welcome. We'll have some wine and a couple little bites, and you'll see art from Honey Art Studio. And we're using that occasion as the moment that we're launching Heritage in the Neighborhoods, focusing on Bayview for 2023. So we are totally available to you. We encourage you to join or contribute to San Francisco Heritage. Our website is sfheritage.org, and we'll see you in about a month with another webinar. Thanks for joining.